Oh, yes. Now we're recording. Welcome to a delightful episode of the Good Listening To podcast with me, Chris Grimes. It's the podcast series that brings you The Clearing, where all good questions come to be asked and all the good stories come to be told. And welcoming today to The Clearing, the lovely, the just phenomenally loyal and awesome friend that is Kate Roberts. Now, why
Well, thank you.
no, thank you. And why I particularly like you, Kate, is you have been over the years very loyal to me in the way that we've worked together an awful lot. And in fact, you gave me one of the best jobs of my entire life back in the day when you were working for PZ Cousins, which is posh soap of imperial leather, for those of you that
Indeed.
in the old days. And yes, it was a job where I went to Thailand around about the time of my 50th birthday. And what particularly surprised me about your awesomeness is that you allowed me to cash in my last few chips of accommodation after the job had finished, actually, when we'd been in Thailand doing this wonderful leadership program. You invited me to just cash my chips in somewhere else in Thailand. So I went to PP Island, and I have you to thank for that. And now I'm quite a bit older, and of course, every island I go to is a PP Island. At my age, you've always got to know, where the heck am I going to do my next PP? See what I did there?
Indeed. Yeah.
Anyway, I've just blown some smoke at you. And also, I Googled you before I started. And did you know that you are, Kate Roberts, one of the foremost Welsh language authors of the 20th century?
I believe so. Yes. Yes. I'm very impressed with that, actually. I'm going with that one.
So, yeah, he quite literally are. In fact, I know that wasn't you because that was the first hit. And that was actually somebody who, awkward, died in 1985. You're still with us.
For now.
Yes, none of us are getting out of here alive. But anyway, all that smoke at you notwithstanding, Kate, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to the podcast Clearing.
Thank you.
So how are you? How's morale? What's your story of the day?
Well, the story of the day is, I guess it's new beginnings, really. So tomorrow I move house. Today I completed on the purchase of a brand new house. So I'm moving to Yorkshire tomorrow to kind of start the next chapter of my life, really. So it's a very exciting time to be talking to you.
And are we near York, or Harrogate, where we're going to the tea rooms? Where are we moving?
Well, it's Beverley, so it's, I would say, halfway between Hull and York. So yes, it's about 10 miles from the coast, which is great. So I've always wanted to live by the coast, but couldn't quite make it all the way to the coast, but 10 miles is good enough. So that's weekend walks on the beach for sure.
And you used to have a caravan in the Isle of Wight. Do you still have one of those?
I did. No, I've sold that. I sold that to actually put that into as the deposit for the new house. So the caravan has kind of given way to, the new start. So it's going to be great.
And that's a beautiful segue into coming into the clearing at the point of new beginnings. I like that. So I'm going to take you through the storytelling metaphors that we like to bounce along through the Good Listening To podcast structure. So we'll talk about a clearing, then we'll talk about shaking your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out, alchemy, gold, and then you get a cake. So it's all to play for, shall we say?
Cake is very important.
That's why it's last, and you get to put a cherry on the cake. Hurrah. So first of all, then, Kate Roberts, by the way, just before we start, if someone doesn't have any reference to you, and of course, I'm very fond of you in that we've known each other for many, many years. If someone doesn't have any reference and just turns to you, as people often do, and say, hello, what do you do? What's your favorite way of answering that?
Well, nobody ever knows what I do because my job doesn't, is one of those ones that never really existed when we were at school. But my specialty is leadership development and talent management. So that those are the specialist areas. I mean, I could get very techie and start talking about competencies and assessments and coaching and all of those things, but that's pretty much what I do, is to help make sure that the next talent in terms of leadership and expertise moves through the organization and help to guide them in terms of leadership development.
And again, sincerely, thank you for the number of times you've brought me into that space to allow me to wibble on in the way that I do. In support of that functionality, obviously. So here we are then, on the open road of being in the clearing. What is a clearing like for you, metaphorically or literally? Where does Kate Roberts go to get clutter-free, inspirational, and able to think with some oxygen blowing between your brain cells?
Always by water. always. Preferably on a beach. That's my special place, and I think I've solved a lot of problems, or helped heal myself through a lot of difficult times by being by the sea and just looking out at the water and letting whatever happens there, I don't know, it's a very magical place for me, but letting that kind of wash over me and, you know, wash away the troubles, I guess.
That's a lovely answer. And there's that lovely Nietzsche quote that I've often quoted, which is the best ideas happen outdoors, and if there's water nearby, and the ever-changing seascape as well. So
Yeah,
you can pick a specific seascape of your choice. So where would we like to stick the flag in the sand, or am I going to plant a tree? Pick a location.
I think the place that actually was the most transformational in terms of that would be on a beach in Ghana. We went to Ghana doing the kind of work that you came and joined us, and as you know, we were very lucky, and we were working with horses and so on, and we had this amazing opportunity to work in Ghana, and trying to find an equestrian yard in Ghana was very difficult. And then through sort of a friend of our managing director, there was an old disused sort of polo club right on the beach in I think Accra, where we're in. So we went there, and it was just a beautiful place. So there was this random field that we set up a horsing arena with tape and oil bins, and that sort of created our arena that we did the horse work in. And then it just had this really like you would imagine on I don't know, a desert island, I guess. All this old sort of beach furniture made out of trunks of trees and stuff set around, and
that
that
driftwood theme to it.
Yeah, very driftwood. Yeah. And so there was an activity in the afternoon where the rest of the group, they took some cards and they were coaching each other, and they went off, and everybody went off and found themselves a little nook. And I sat on this makeshift sofa, which had some nice sort of quite battered cushions on it, and just stared out at the sea under this palm tree on this amazing beach. And kind of decided what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, really.
Okay, so if I may, then I'm going to arrive at that very spot within the Ghanaian beach and plant a tree there. And now we're going to shake your tree to see which storytelling apples fall out. And this is where we're going to unpack the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise, where you've had 5 minutes, Kate Roberts, to have thought about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention. Oh, squirrels, which is what I also like to say at that point. That's borrowed from the film Up. And then a quirky or unusual fact about you we couldn't possibly know. And it's up to you to just let these apples clonk down as you'd like. So over to you.
Well, I guess it was quite interesting looking at the 4 things that shaped me. And what I realized when I wrote down these 4 things is that really, I find that at various times in my life, I hit a brick wall, and that wall forces me to change direction. And the direction it pushes me in is always better than the one before. So it's quite interesting how those sort of intervals have happened. So I guess my first one would be when I was 16. So all my life, I'd wanted to go into nursing, and I did sciences at school, and I'd been in the Red Cross, and, watched anything that was medical that I could lay my hands on, and I got a place.
Clearing, I'm assuming.
Well, it's obviously very important.
Laying hands on George is important.
And excellent choice. And so I had a place at nursing school to do that. But a couple of years before then, I'd had a very bad back injury. And that put me out of action for a year. And after passing all the relative sort of hoops to get into nursing school to do a nursing degree, a nursing course and then a nursing degree that would come after that, they refused me on medical. So everything that I wanted to be since the age of 3 just came to an absolute grinding, very sudden halt, that I was not able to do it. There was a flat no. So anybody with a back injury, they wouldn't take.
Whereas nowadays they'll take anyone with a pulse for all
Well,
the
yes, indeed. Yeah. So
Lol.
that was a really difficult time at 16. My parents were moving house, so we were sort of ending one school and moving to a new area, and my sort of dream career that I wanted for so many years just didn't materialize. So so the first thing that I did was to kind of go and just work in retail, really, and just kind of gave up on. I had no idea what to do. So my dad actually gave me some really good advice and said, why don't you just go and do some work and see what happens. So I, really kind of did a whole bunch of stuff, really, but I did some retail, and then I got into a estate agency, which I absolutely loved, and ran a branch very badly as a leader. I mean, I have to say, quite astonishingly dreadful as a leader at about sort of 19, 20. Yes, I think in terms of leadership development, I can wholeheartedly recommend the wrong way to do it.
I love that. Don't be like I am.
Yeah, yeah. If you do that, I can promise you bad things will happen. So yes, so that happened, and that did well. And then from that, I went into yet more selling in terms of financial services, and that was great. And then I hit the second brick wall from then. So that was the sort of the second sort of shaping, really.
Yeah.
And that was that I went through a very serious period of mental illness that lasted for about 5 years, and really took me from somebody that was very confident, very independent, working, to somebody that actually had no confidence at all, no self-esteem, no self-worth, definitely hadn't wanted to live. Really terrible period.
Do you remember what the catalyst for that was, as to why the plug sort of fell out from beneath your world?
There were a couple of things. I mean, part of it was a hormonal imbalance that just kind of really got out of hand, and it was misdiagnosed. And because you're fairly sort of young and in your 20s, people just kind of think that you're a bit difficult and a bit awkward, and and it just kind of drifted down and down, really, to a very, very dark place. But my mum was great, actually, because she really fought for me during that time to get me help, because I think one of the things when you're in that situation is that you really can't get help. And I think then attitudes to mental illness were quite a lot different to how they are now. So my GP was phenomenally unhelpful and rather unpleasant, and she did a load of research. I mean, luckily she worked at a hospital, and she went in the library and researched and found a specialist and got me there.
Yeah.
And I got different medication, and over a period of time it kind of, the light came back on again, and I was able to restart. But nice, what was,
I like that.
Yeah, yeah, it really did. It was it kind of, it was sort of like a rebirthing, but a rebirthing. I said it's like waking up and finding a bomb had gone off in my life. It's just like, oh, I'm feeling a little better, but there's actually nothing left of my life anymore. How do I start? And so, again, I had really no confidence, and I started off. Oh gosh, I worked in a news agent, and then I gradually moved on from that, and then I got into recruitment, which I loved, actually, and that was good. It was stressful, but it was good. But during that time, I kind of figured out what it was that I wanted to do, and I'd been through a lot of jobs at that point, and on top of being a fairly atrocious boss, I'd also had some fairly atrocious bosses at that stage, and I was just kind of thinking about what to do, and I was really feeling like I'd failed completely. And I've been lucky enough to, and I kind of come on to that when I talk about the Inspire, but I've been lucky to work with some incredible female leaders, actually, who've really inspired me. But and I'll save that for later, because otherwise I'll have used up one of my inspires. But I decided that I wanted to do something about it. I thought that there must be a better way to lead people and inspire people and make work enjoyable and help develop people. So I rang around all the big companies in Birmingham where I was living and said, look, if I want to do this kind of work, what do I need? And they explained to me that I would need this chartership of the IPD. And so I did quite a brave thing. So I gave up my recruitment job and I did telesales 3 days a week to go to college and get my chartership. And then as I got that, I was then very lucky enough to get my first training job at Direct Line, and that was where I found my home. I mean, you know, this is the job that I was meant to do. So it's quite interesting when you look back and you think around, you know, there's so many jobs I thought I was meant to do. So I thought I was meant to do nursing, and then I thought I was meant to do sales, and then I finally realized that actually, you know, training and people development is really where my passion is. Yes. And that actually evolved into the talent world, because then that brings together the recruitment piece that I love, but it's internal and around developing people's careers. So it kind of brings my two passions together. So yeah, so that was, you know, really, really important.
And I'm loving the theme of the fact that it's always a barrier or an obstacle of adversity that then you overcome to get to a better place.
It always is. It always is. And I think I saw you know, these things that come up on Facebook, and, you know, people put these sort of quotes up, but the one that really stuck out to me, and I know that, you know, they're a bit trite, aren't they? But the one that always stands back to me is that, you know, you need to pull the bow. I'm not sure whether this is the right terminology, but you need to pull the bow back in order for the arrow to spring forwards.
Yes.
And I feel that very much in my leadership journey, is that I'm being pulled back at times, and then I'm able to move forwards.
Even if you're feeling a bit of a heart twang and the pain of adversity, you
yes
twang it back to play it forward.
Yes, exactly that. So I worked at Direct Line, and I worked there for 8 years, and I absolutely loved it. And I wanted to move into the sort of the more senior work. And I wasn't successful, and I applied for it and I didn't get it. And I was really like stunned as to why I didn't get it. And what I got was some really great feedback around, well, this is great, but your only experience is here. And actually, you know, if you're going to work at a more senior level, you need to have a broader knowledge base. And that was really an important piece around lifelong learning, and why that is important to keep learning and broadening your experience. So again, you know, I left a company that I loved and a job that I was happy in, and then went off and did consultancy and various other different types of work, which was all phenomenally stressful. I didn't enjoy much of that, but it was a huge growth opportunity. So I worked with lots and lots and lots of different companies over a 3-4 year period, and gained a huge amount of experience. And then I ended up heading up leadership development for a company called HomeServe in the Midlands, which again was a job that I loved doing.
I remember coming back to meet you in that context as well.
You did.
Treating customers fairly. Thanks very much.
We did. We did many workshops around treating customers fairly. Yes, which was splendid. And of course, we did the coaching workshop there as well, which you were a huge part of in that too. I remember in that porter cabin in the car park, where was the glamour of the L&D world.
The glamour. Anyway, around about that time, I credit you for giving me an awful lot of the vocabulary I now to this day use around coaching, because you were the first person to ever pull me out in front of a group. I don't mean that's the first time I've ever been put in front of an audience, but you took me through an analogy of telling me.
It was the apples and oranges game, wasn't it?
Oranges, yeah. So only I made the connections myself, but you just need to say, look, let's assume you've got some apples, but you want some oranges. Off we go. And it just became a really profound series of metaphors in my head that kept percolating afterwards.
I can really remember that conversation as well. I can see us sort of sat in the said porter cabin doing that conversation, which was great. I mean, I just love those types of moments. And then another couple of barriers came up. So 2 things happened. One was that the recession kicked in, and I was made redundant, which was devastating.
My assumption then.
Yes. Yes. So that was really devastating. And I remember the recruiter that I spoke to at the time saying, you need to prepare yourself, you'll be out of work for about 7 months. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. I've never been out of work, for any period of time other than when I was ill. And of course it was almost exactly 7 months that it took me to get back into work. During which time the relationship that I was in completely imploded in the worst possible way. So again, I went through this really extraordinarily painful time of a pretty messy and horrific relationship breakup, and then and also losing the job that I loved. But that actually led again to a really extraordinary experience. So I was contacted by a recruiter out of the many hundreds of thousands of CVs that I sent out, and she said, "Oh, we're looking for somebody to do talent, leadership development, and performance management for an FMCG company in Manchester. Have you heard of Pizza Cousins?" And I was like most people, I've heard of the soap.
Imperial leather.
Imperial leather.
In Uganda, by the way, that was posh soap. Nowadays, it's not so posh in my mind, but it was posh soap back in the day.
Well, it was posh. Yeah, it was posh. It was posh when my parents were growing up as well, So I think it has that legacy because it goes back a long time, Imperial leather soap.
They still might have, I don't know, but there was that label that was magnetic and you'd better stick it on a soap magnet.
Yes, it's just a sticker now, unfortunately, but yes, I do remember that.
Because it eventually knew it's time to change it when you were getting scratched by the damn label.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing, really. Yeah, it was supposed to be called Russian leather, actually. The original title was going to be Russian leather, but after the war, they felt that was inappropriate, so it became Imperial leather.
Different from the tongue twister of red leather, yellow leather, which is...
Yes, I was just thinking that as I was saying it, actually. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so they put me forward for this job, and they said, "Oh no, they want people with FMCG experience. So you're really the wild card entry."
FMCG,
fast moving consumer goods.
It sounds like it's my radio station, FMCG.
Yes, FMCG. Yeah.
Oh, I've made it about me. That's a bit selfish.
Sorry. So they put me forward for that role. And I was lucky enough to get it, and that's where I met Samantha and I met Steve and so many great people there. And for the first time, I travelled really extensively internationally, and I used to laugh when I started there because I didn't like flying particularly, and my extent of holidays was a Thompson Gold holiday. So there was a lot of when I first went to some of the places that they sent us to, I was going, this is not Thompson Gold.
We're talking places like Nigeria, aren't we here? So
yeah, we are. Yeah. But when I joined there, I remember Steve saying to me that I wouldn't have to do long haul for the first year.
Steve, what's Steve's second name? We both know, but
Steve Hassan. Yeah, Steve Hassan. So Steve Hassan was the recruiter, and I went to work for Samantha Jones, and Steve was amazing. I mean, such a fun guy to work with, and one of the best recruiters I've ever met. I mean, just really, really great guy. And so I started working, and he said to me, I remember this conversation distinctly, saying to me, well, don't worry, because you'll only be working in Europe for the first year, so it'll just be Greece and maybe Poland. And I was thinking, well, I've been to Greece on holiday, on Thompson Gold holiday.
Yes.
So that will be fine. I can do that. And of course, my first trip was Indonesia, so that was quite extraordinary. It was just a complete lie.
Yeah.
So although I was pretty frightened of flying, I ended up flying a lot and spending a huge amount of time abroad, going to all these amazing places and meeting amazing people, and made a lot of friends. And in fact, it was quite interesting. There's a couple of it was a couple of my sort of HR colleagues that I've really retained contact with, Chika and Kanchana, I've stayed in pretty good contact with. But actually, the Ghanaian HR director, who's long since left PZ, this year on my birthday on LinkedIn actually remembered and said happy birthday. So it's quite nice. There's a lot of very happy memories there.
It's just been your birthday this month during the pandemic.
It has.
Your first pandemic birthday, I think. Because I think it was it was the 5th of March, wasn't it?
It was. So this is the first in lockdown. We weren't in lockdown last year. I just got my 50th birthday party in last year before we went into lockdown. I know it, and actually I can remember we were just, there was a funny post that my friend Simon Johnson was reading at the party, and about how different nationalities were coping with this sort of idea of COVID, and it was saying that, you know, the threat level in the UK had been raised to pretty naffed off.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm pretty naffed off now.
Yeah, which I thought was really funny. So we were absolutely howling, because I think at that time probably 36 people had been infected. So it just seemed like a massive overreaction. And of course, you know, how lucky none of us went into government, because, you know, a month later, the world was very serious indeed. You know, however unprepared the government might have been, we would have been so much worse.
You thought you were naffed off then, but how naffed off are we now?
Exactly. So yeah, so that was the sort of adversity that took me to PZ Cousins, which was fantastic, and met so many great people.
In your narrative, you're very defined by the shaping of work, I'm noticing.
Yes, I guess so. I mean, I would say work is my passion, and yes, I think I probably do count as a bit of a workaholic, really, because I love what I do, and yeah, actually, you know, I was asked a question by a global HRD in a meeting recently, and it's like an informal coffee meeting that you dial into, and I was there to talk about new competencies, so I knew that he was going to be asking me some questions, and I was primed and ready, and he started with so who is Kate Roberts? And I went, oh, well, you know, I'm the manager of talent foundations, and that's what I do. And he went, no, but who are you really? And I just had this real blind panic on the video call.
With one of the most famous Welsh language authors of the 20th century.
Who am I? Great question. Not entirely sure I have an answer. Yeah, just this sort of single woman living alone with two dogs, one of which is a cliche lockdown puppy.
Yes, I know you had Wendy the Whippet, but you've since acquired yourself a lockdown new bestie, which is quite tricky.
Jenny the Jack Russell puppy. Yes,
and she's not been the easiest of
no,
Jack Russell puppies.
No, she's a total nightmare. She's very cute, and that is her saving grace. She's a proper sort of scrappy dog. That's what she looks like, a proper scrappy dog.
And we'll find out whether she's one of the sort of hoot squirrel distractions that's coming later on.
Yes, indeed. Yes. So
so have we arrived at the 4 things that have shaped you, just to keep the structure on track?
So the fourth thing that came from that, so I did this fantastic job, international travel, love that. And then I think one of the most sort of defining things is then my parents became ill. First my father with dementia, and seeing him go through that decline was extraordinary. I mean, really, gosh, desperate and depressing, and
what was the timeline arc of descent into dementia? How many years were you having to manage alongside?
4 years. 4 years, and really said lockdown puppy. But yeah, and kind of what happened was that his behavior became more and more erratic and harder for my mum to deal with. And so she would be phoning me, you know, in some distress. And of course I would be the other side of the world training and doing stuff. And it just became untenable to do that. So I decided to take advantage of voluntary redundancy, because they were reshaping at the time, which was great, because that gave me sort of a bit of a cushion. And then left my flat and moved back home, and actually moved in with my parents, and built a little porta cabin in the garden to kind of live in, known as the Wendy house, because I'd always wanted one when I was little.
And the dog called Wendy. See what you're doing there. That's
exactly. Somebody actually did put that on Facebook actually at the time. I went, have you built that for your dog? And I'm like, no,
it's mine.
Why would you build that for your dog? With a shower room as well, you know, just to keep my dog sparkling clean. But no. So I moved back home to be around and work locally, to be on hand. And I have to say, you know, for anybody, with a family member that's going through dementia, it's just the darkest of times, because it's very, very difficult. The behavior before the diagnosis is so easily misinterpreted as irritating, difficult, stupid, ridiculous, frustrating. And then there's just no help at all. I mean, just really difficult to get any kind of support. And then when he actually had to go into a home, not necessarily not by our choice, by social services choice, although it was too difficult to look after him at home. It was just staggering that the enormous cost fell to me and my sister to fill the gap with, and the fact that could go on for years, and in fact it did go on for years, and that too was a really life-changing experience to go through.
Yes.
So I kind of went through that period, and then Dad became a bit more stable, and I had a contract up in the north of England, and moved up here. Brought Mum with me. We sold the family home and brought Mum up here, and she arrived as a healthy person, albeit very stressed about Dad, and within 8 weeks of us being here, she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. So that was very, very sad. But I have to say, again, I kind of think that life was sort of on my side, really, because it brought me to an area where we were close to the Christie Hospital, which is some of the best treatment you could get in the world. A really good network in terms of, I had a really good doctor that was looking out for me, and I was able to go and talk to her about my mum and Mum's condition, as well as supporting Mum through that. So yeah, I mean, a very difficult time for us as a family, obviously, and unfortunately,
sort of 7 ages of man stroke woman, you've been through one of those extraordinary experiences now, where I know, because I know you, that you've lost both parents now, and
yes,
across that plane of adversity.
Yes, absolutely, and they both went in the same week, which was really difficult, and in fact it was an extraordinary situation, really. Sorry, I feel like we've taken a very dark turn now, but
no. And by the way, there is a parallel just in the human experience. I bizarrely and coincidentally, I lost both my grandfathers in the same week.
Oh wow!
Just
yeah,
one was ill, and everyone was focusing at one, and then the one behind went. So it was all the funny side
yes.
now, but it was just an extraordinary week.
Yes, I mean it really was. I mean, two things happened that were extraordinary. I mean, the first thing that happened was that I went back to work with somebody that I worked for years and years ago, Kathy, who I'd done recruitment for years ago, and she had a recruitment agency up here, and I'd gone back. I took a year off to nurse Mum, and I'd gone back and started doing a bit of work there just to earn some money, really. And then whilst I was doing that, an opportunity for a permanent job came up, which was great. And that was, again, working with Samantha from PZ. So again, it was working with somebody from the past.
The thing I know about you is your own fierce loyalty to those around you, but also you are a loyal person. So it's not surprising that what goes around comes around, and people come back to you and stay loyal to you.
Yeah, I mean, I do find that I kind of, I don't make friends easily, but once I do, I tend to hold on to them. I kind of think anybody can figure out how to work with me, because they should stay.
Well, I know horse whispering is one of your favorite passions with leadership, so maybe there's some Kate Roberts whispering to go on there as well.
Maybe, yeah, indeed. So I just started work for this great company, IDEX, and they were incredibly supportive, because in the first sort of 3 months that I worked for them, not only did a pandemic come around, and I kind of thought, but I'm going to be laid off, and I wasn't. And then I was really, Mum was very, very ill, and she died at home, and they were tremendously supportive to me during that time, which was again extraordinary and wonderful to have that degree of support when I was going through that time.
And I know that you metaphorically have had a perfect storm, because you've had the pandemic and your parents going all within the same historical sort of deluge of.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. But the extraordinary thing, and we were talking about the connection of people, is that, you know, my mum and dad, in the November before, so that would be November 2019, they'd been married for 50 years. And certainly up until the point that dad had been in a home, had never really been apart before. So it was big for mum when she moved up here. But the extraordinary thing was that in the week that mum was clearly going to die very, very imminently, the last 3 days, Sarah, my sister, came up and stayed with me. And at the moment that mum died, the care home phoned to say that dad had taken a very serious turn and that they thought my dad was going to die. So it was just this huge kind of, wow, you know, there's two big messages
like
happening.
A sort of life force, energetic conjoinment between the two of them.
Yes, it kind of did feel like that. It was very, very strange and very odd. And yeah, so that they had that. And of course, you know, mum obviously did in that moment die, and then dad died, I think it was 3 days later. Yeah.
And by the way, there's a slight comic lens. I thought of your mum again a couple of days ago, because a Facebook thing came back up into the timeline, which was me trying to sell a log store a couple of years ago. And I remember your mother chuckling a lot at how I was trying to flog this store. That picture came back.
She loved you.
Obviously.
I mean, she loved what I did. I always think that if mum had been born later, she would have followed the same sort of career path, because she really enjoyed what I did. And of course, as you know, she used to come along and watch anything. I mean, I think she's watched just about everything I've done, really. So, you know, people who work with me a long time get used to like being introduced to, here's my family, and they all come with me.
And I think you probably knew this anyway, but I know you tell me that he can swear a bit. But I think your mum pointed out that he can swear a bit, can't he?
Oh yeah, she did not approve of your swearing at all. And I do remember being in the car, and I think you were in the back seat, and her going, Christopher.
I took the rap.
Yeah, and she was like, you know, such a lovely man. If only he would stop swearing.
Therein lies my legacy, and we're going to make your legacy more important. Nice bloke, just swore a lot, math like a buck.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she'd be wagging her finger at you.
The metaphorical waggling from the sky from Jenny Roberts, marvelous.
Exactly. Yeah.
So are we at the point where we've shaken the tree of the 4 things that have shaped you?
You have, yes. Those are the 4 things.
And again, I'm intrigued by, obviously work is an immense passion for you, a real defining thing, the route map and the overcoming adversity.
Yes, I would say that those are the 2 kind of rhythms that my life has kind of gone along.
And yes, in good company, it's the idea of life is a series of obstacles and barriers, and how we overcome them is what life is all about.
Well, yeah, and I think actually, you know, when you look back, I mean, what I have gained from that is immense resilience. And I think some of those things are things that, you know, my parents said to me. I mean, my mum would always say, there's always an answer. And that was, you know, whenever I was kind of like, you know, oh, I just don't know what to do, she would say, there's always an answer. And I would go to sleep and wake up, and of course, there always is an answer. So, you know, and I think what I got from my dad was, you know, I mean, dad had his own challenges, but I mean, my God, he worked hard. I mean, he really worked hard. So that sort of hardworking ethic, I think, was a real sort of key example for that he set, and I think that's probably where some of that comes from. And it makes you resilient. Yes. And I think, you know, that there's, I mean, it's a series of catastrophes, so one never likes to tempt fate, but you know, I do kind of yeah, exactly. You know, if it can get worse, it will.
You've reminded me of that. I think it's Gabriel Garcia Marquez, whoever wrote 100 Years of Solitude. When he died, he left a statement to the world about 2 things. He said, "I'm going to tell you what I've noticed and what I've learned." And this is pertaining to obstacles in life. He said, "What I've noticed is that everybody wants to live atop the mountain, but what I've learned, life isn't living atop the mountain. It's the journey towards the summit."
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that's true.
So that's your apples of inspiration. No, now we're going to go to who inspires you. 3 things that inspire you now.
Well, I actually picked 3 people. So because they were all very pivotal to me, again through work, I guess, but more as us through life. And two of these people you will know. So the first person that inspired me was Vicky Espin. So Vicky is a leadership coach, but she was coaching back in the late 90s when it was like really, it wasn't mainstream and it wasn't really well known. And I was very lucky enough to meet her at a very early stage in my career. And I just thought that what she did was amazing. And I knew that I wanted to do that. And I didn't know quite how to do that at that stage, but I knew that that's what I wanted to be. And I've been lucky enough to do that and to follow a similar career path. And of course, Vicky's one of those people that stayed with me, both as a friend and as a work colleague over the years. And
thanks to you, I've been in the same room as the two of you together. I know exactly who you mean. Yeah,
exactly. So so she was my first sort of real inspiration when I was starting out in training, thinking, where's this going to take me? She really did that for me. And also that sort of ability. I mean, she taught, I think I was first taught coaching by her probably around the year 2000, 2001. So a long time. And those questions, as you will know, are immensely powerful. And I've used them all through my life, really, to think through problems and challenges. So, what she imparted was not only memorable, but phenomenally useful as a life skill rather than anything else. So I would say that Vicky was the first person that really inspired me. The second person that I think was most transformational for me was working for Samantha. So I work for Samantha again now, Samantha Jones, but Samantha and I have had a really interesting working relationship. So we are very, very different people. I mean, extraordinarily different. Any psychometric you do, we are the absolute polar opposites. And we had a really uncomfortable 6 or 7 first months working together. It wasn't particularly pleasant for either of us,
shall we say?
Yes, there definitely was sand in the gears. Yes. And but we kind of worked through it, and we found a way to work together. And she's phenomenally talented at what she does, and I really admire her huge mind and capacity to be able to think and pull together great ideas. But she just, out of a lot of the managers that I work for, she really stands out as one that really stood out in terms of great feedback I didn't even want to hear, really, often.
Remembering it's a gift. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a gift, and I'd like to give it back, thanks. But actually got me to work in a different way, got me to behave in a different way, and I was a lot more successful as a result of that. So her taking the time to give that feedback and to share some of that knowledge really did accelerate my career as I left working with her. And I'm always grateful, and I'm thrilled to be working with her again now, because
so the loyalty's there again in the reciprocal.
Yeah, and it feels reciprocal. Yes. And I think what it also allows us to do is, because we have that really solid relationship that we kind of really fought to find our way, is that we can really debate things with passion now and know that we're not going to upset the other person. We can have really
conflict. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. We can have really robust conversations. And she's still giving me feedback that I don't really often want to listen to, but I do listen to it because I know that she gives it for a reason. And I think it's extraordinary to have somebody in your life that actually does that for you. And I've had really fortunate, I mean, I've worked for some terrible bosses, really, but I've also had these really impressive women. I mean, the other person that was really loyal to me, and I'm kind of sneaking a spare one in here, but was
You've sneaked in a spare.
I've sneaked in a spare. It is Kathy Bates. So she ran the recruitment agency that I worked for when I did the first career change previously. And then when my mum was so ill and I was looking for some sort of part-time work, she gave me the opportunity to go in and help in her recruitment company for a short period of time. And that was just so amazing to be able to go and work with her and get really passionate about her business and just get my foot back in the door of working, after taking 18 months off to look after my mum. And Yeah, you know, but what I remember most about Kathy was when I was really looking at a career change and thinking, what am I going to do with my life? You know, when I was back working for her as a recruiter, I was about 20, I think I was 29, and I was kind of doing that. My life's a failure, you know, where am I going with my life? And I always remember her saying, most people don't find their flow and their career until they're at least 30. And she said that, you know, that's what happened for her. And actually, that was exactly what happened to me. It took me until I was 30 to kind of find what I was good at. And then it kind of went from there.
Or indeed, it can even be later, as people will do. Yes.
Yeah. So you know, so I'm sort of grateful to those, you know, two bosses.
And well done for sneaking an extra one in there. I like that. So
yeah. So my third, you know, because that was my 2.5.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, this is the third one. So
I've lost count of how many you're sneaking in now.
I know. No. This is no. So we've got Kathy, we've got Vicky, we've got Samantha, and Farouz. So Kathy's my snuck in one. So Farouz, Farouz is she is an amazing woman, and she is a psychotherapist, Farouz Awanat. And I went to see her when my mum was really ill, and I knew that I was very stressed, and I knew that it was going to be a really difficult time, and I wanted some help to try and make sense of what was happening. You know, I wanted to, I mean, I knew I was going to be very upset, but I didn't want to be destroyed by it. And having had a brush with mental illness in the past, I kind of guess I'm always a little bit nervous that, you know, there's a path that I don't want to go down. And one of the really inspirational things that she said to me was that, you know, people now expect to be happy all the time, living their best life. And she said, we're just not designed to do that. Humans do not, you're not meant to be happy all the time, you know. And that, you know,
indeed, if people are like that, you want to slap them.
Yeah, well, indeed, yeah. She said that, you know, they're usually taking drugs. That's probably what it is.
Well, that explains it. Yes,
indeed. But what she said was, you know, instead of fighting your pain or trying to rationalize your pain or trying to explain it, you know, why did this happen to me, or what could I have done, or, you know, she said, learn to carry your pain with you, but carry it gently. And she gave me this metaphor of a piece of prickly cacti, and saying, if that's the pain that you have in your hand, learn to carry it with you, but carry it gently, rather than gripping onto it and struggling with it. It's like, just carry it, and it will be with you, but less painful. And that
notion of remember to just go through it,
yes,
it will pass.
Yes, exactly. And just absorb it and accept it. And she practices what she calls it acceptance therapy. And it is just that. It's around stuff happens and just absorb it, and you know, and it doesn't have to defeat you. But it was interesting that she, you know, that the skills that make you successful at work around those sort of rationaling and arguing and pushing and, you know, are really bad with mental things, and that you should just kind of let things lie and let things alone, and just kind of accept that they're there, and, you know, carry it with you. And that was my inspirational thing.
Lovely, which resonates beautifully. There's a quote I heard recently about, only when you look back on adversity can you see the grace, you know, the good that
yes indeed,
pain to arrive at that point.
Yes.
And by the way, this podcast of itself has come about out of adversity, so
that's
interesting for me as well to have, that's the concrete thing.
And I think that's true. I think that's very true, you know, when you look back. And I remember you know, my friend Chika, I think you may have met Chika Hutora. She's in Indonesia, and she's a very devout Muslim. And when Mum was first ill, she said to me, you know, it's a privilege. You're very lucky. It's a privilege in our religion to get the opportunity to nurse a parent. And I didn't feel very privileged at the time. I wasn't terribly impressed that she told me that. But at the end of that period, well, she said two things to me. She said, one, it was a privilege. And two, she said, you know, that God would provide whatever I needed. And I was like, well, I did not need this. But actually, you know, and I'm not a religious person, but it was interesting. I reflected on afterwards that it was a privilege to spend that time nursing my mum, and we got very close and had lots of deep and meaningful conversations, and I was very lucky to have the opportunity to do that. but also things did kind of present themselves. You know, we were right next to a world leading hospital. We had great support, you know, in the GP and the doctors that she was being seen by, and, you know, Kathy being around the corner and offering me a job when I needed it, and all of these things. So actually, you know, what she said did kind of come to pass, really.
And I have heard it framed. There was another someone I spoke to called Genevieve Catherine Grant, who talked about the privilege in enabling a good death. So the fact that you're able to give the airlock.
Yes, I mean, I have to say, that sort of metaphor of, you know, they died peacefully at home after a long illness. I didn't feel that there was anything terribly peaceful about Mum's passing, if I'm honest. And also, you know, in lockdown, where it was difficult to get people to come out, it was pretty traumatic. But I am glad that she did die at home, and she died with me and my sister here, and my dog Wendy, who she loved. And what she didn't do was, as so many people unfortunately have done, is die alone in an ICU bed, which so easily could have happened. And so I'm very thankful for that.
And now we're into two things that never fail to grab your attention in the squirrels way.
Well, the two things that really grab my attention are talent in whatever form it is. I love working with people that are incredibly talented. So I love working with you, Chris, because I think you are phenomenally good at what you do. And, you know, I just love that skill that you have, whether you're acting, whether it's in your comedy improvisation, whether it's in your coaching work. So many of those little videos that you did when you were riding your bike in the park or whatever, you know, they meant a lot to me. When you started your page of, you know, sharing funny stories and things
like virus Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I have to say, in a dark place, that provided a huge amount of comfort. So, you know, that I don't know whether you kind of imagined that it would provide that level of comfort, but it certainly did. It lifted the dark day.
Thank you for that. You were the first overt text that came in going, do you know what, this means an awful lot, because it is providing, you know, humor in adversity. And so I'm grateful to you for sending me that text, because since then I've had quite a few affirmations, and it's grown to about 1,200 group members now, the hashtag lol virus. So it is providing something.
It is. And I think that ability to raise a smile is very important, you know. But I love that. I love working with people that are artistic. I love working with people that are talented. You know, I never think that I don't really think that I have a lot of that natural talent. I think I'm a bit of a magpie. I think I'm good at seeing what other people do and pinching a bit of that, going, oh, okay, I can weave that into what I've got, and I can weave a bit of this in and do that. But I think people that have that natural talent, and particularly, you know, artistic or theatrical talent, I'm really inspired by. I just think that that's amazing. I love live theatre. You know, I don't much care for sort of, you know, musicals or ballet or opera or any of those things, but I love theatre, or a good drama. I think is just so absorbing. I think that's magical. And the other thing, and I would say this also applies to you too, is kindness. Kindness, other people displaying kindness is something that I am really hooked into. And I you know, and I think that's such an attractive trait in people, that ability to be kind to other people, and now more than ever before. But those are the two things that really do kind of grab my attention.
Lovely answer to that idea of the story metaphor. And now one quirky or unusual fact about you, as we finally shake your tree, as we couldn't possibly know about you until you tell us.
Quirky or unusual? I don't know. I'm trying to think what you didn't know about me. So I guess what I'm going to share with you that you may not know is that, I mean, of course, when you work with somebody who's been to, you know, drama school and does this for a living, I mean, everybody kind of looks at EastEnders or whatever and thinks, I could do that, you know, without realizing how incredibly, you know, talented you need to be in order to do something, you know, like drama. But as a small child, with a lot of confidence, I, like a lot of really small children, went to ballet school, and I went to quite a famous ballet school in Birmingham called the Betty Fox Ballet School, and indeed, yeah. And every year, the Betty Fox Ballet School used to put on a well, dance as well, but they used to put on a big show at the Hippodrome in Birmingham, so the big main theatre, and I was in the babies class, or the babes, so we were known as the Betty Fox babes, and
Lovely.
yeah, I know, and we would be, I don't know, maybe about 5 or 6, I mean really little, and we were, you couldn't do it now, we were dancing to the stripper, so you know that you know, so we had on
babes do the stripper.
I know, so we had these great big hats on, these sort of fancy hats that my mum would have had to have acquired this sort of stuff, and then I had a bikini on. We all had these bikinis onto which my mum sewed thousands of sequins. I remember it being like a pale pink, and she sewed on all these large red sequins to cover it. And then we had on like these little jackets that were like a vibrant green with sort of a pink frill on the edge. So a little sort of rip-off skirt, kind of like, you know, making your mind up sort of moment, you know, No, you know what I mean? Yeah, that was Bucks Fizz, wasn't it? Yeah.
Who was that making your mind up? What's that band?
Bucks Fizz.
Sorry,
yes, it was sort of that sort of moment. And these sort of fancy shoes, you know. So basically what would happen was we would come on, and then we would dance this, and we would end up in our bikinis, you see, that we would do, taking off, you know, this sort of very famous song. I mean, you think now, and you think, we took these small children, we made them strip off on stage for a full audience.
We've all done it.
To a bikini. It's kind of, I mean, I have to say, it was much more innocent times.
So you will be known as Kate Darcy Bustle, Roberts.
I know. But my job was to lead on the Betty Fox babes, and so I led the troupe on. So I was first on and last off the stage of the Hippodrome. So, you know, who knows? But
illustrious company indeed. The Betty Fox babes, lead ballerina back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah, dancing the striptease. So my quirky fact is that I have danced the striptease on the Birmingham Hippodrome stage.
As have not us all. That's lovely. Fantastic. Okay, now we move away from the tree, but we stay in the clearing. Yeah. We're going to talk about alchemy and gold now, which you've been giving me in spades anyway. But what is the essence of Kate Roberts in the alchemy and gold, as I like to call it, also the diamonds beneath your feet that you're here to reveal? So what do you most like to bring to the world in what you do?
Oh gosh. I think I like to help people find their way. I'm not, when I work with people, you tend to find that people fall into two camps. So there'll be people that need help but don't want it, or you know, aren't prepared to sort of take action. I find that quite frustrating, and I lose interest very quickly. But you know, with people that really want that, then what I'm really looking, I really enjoy that sort of helping other people to succeed, helping other people to move on. That's a real sort of passion for me. I get a huge kick out of that, in helping people get promoted or helping them find their own career dreams. That I mean, that sounds sort of terribly kind of grandiose, really, but that's what I really enjoy most.
A recent sort of label for that, which you are very welcome to agree or disagree with, is called servant leadership. The idea of for whom and for what am I in service? How can I help as a mindset?
Yes, I would say that is a deep sort of driver for me. I think, you know, those sort of values of family, loyalty and trust are incredibly ingrained in me, and it's sort of all wound up in that, really, but trying to help
deep vein of energy to reveal that quality I have experienced in you, because, you know, I've been a direct positive beneficiary of your loyalty over the years, and so you have a deep well of energy to help people develop, I think, which is very commendable and admirable.
Thank you.
And now you've arrived at the cake. Hurrah!
Yeah, hurrah!
So because it's you choose a cake of your choice that you can put a cherry on.
I think it it would have to be a Black Forest Gatto, because that has lots of cherries on it, really. But yeah, I really like a Black Forest Gatto.
You're snacking extra cherries in, I noticed, because
well, yeah, extra inspiration, extra cherries, yeah.
Go you with your extra cherries on your Black Forest Gatto.
Yeah.
So the cherry on the cake is the final metaphor, or cherries on the cake is you, again, you can go where you like with this, but what advice might you give to your younger self? Could be a favorite inspirational quote, could be to get existential. It could be, how would you most like to be remembered? Inspired by Shakespeare's All the World's a Stage. So what would you like to say as your cherry on the cake?
I think it's I think I would really stick with, you know, my mum saying is that there's always an answer. You know, however bad things are, there is always a way out. You know, you just need to take some time and, you know, don't panic, that there will always be a way out, and that there is always light around the corner. You might not see it or you might not feel it, but it is there. And I guess that I feel that now, you know, after this sort of really difficult time. And, you know, today I completed on their house, and tomorrow I'm moving, and it's a new house in a new area, and me and the dogs, and, you know, and it all feels, it feels brighter again. And I think that would be my message to my earlier self is, you know, hang in there. There is an answer. It will get better, and it does.
Lovely. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the delightful Kate Roberts here on the Good Listening To podcast with me, Chris Grimes. Is there anything else you'd like to say as a parting comment, Kate Roberts?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you to you, Chris, because I feel like this has been incredibly cathartic, and more than I anticipated that it would be. And also to happen on this day that I'm moving, it kind of feels like it's sort of the right way to, it feels like it's come at just the right moment. So, you know, thank you. It's been a privilege to be able to share that with you, and to be a part of your podcast as well. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And a recent guest, somebody called Wendy Bagger, said it's like having a day spa for your brain. So I don't know whether that you can relate to that.
How lovely.
But thank you very much for being here. You've been listening to Good Listening To podcast. This has been Kate Roberts. I have been Chris Grimes, and we'll both continue to be that for many, many years, I hope. And good night.